When the dawning sun shines through the windows of the school, the hallways are filled with crimson light. Walking down the hallway alone, you suddenly hear him. Kara kara. Kara kara. You stop. Kada. 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 It's Kada-san, restlessly wandering the aisles, haunting the school and its pupils. Then, suddenly, you feel the icy breath in your neck, tickling your ear, sending a shiver down your spine. What did I do? Frozen, you stand still. Whatever you do, don't turn around. The scary and spooky promise of 9-RIP turns out not to be as spooky as expected, but still ripped my heart apart with its emotional storytelling, and it's already the best Otome game of 2023 for me. Misa is a high school girl who has to decide for her future university, succumbing to the pressure her mom puts on her to go to medical school. Until one day she feels the breath of Kada-san, and a few moments later gets spirited away. And depending on where you end up being spirited away, the game splits up into 4 different long common routes with 2 characters each. First, the school world, where you meet Kada-san, also known as Kureha, and the boy in the mirror, the shy Hibiki. But the second you meet Kureha, you realize not all ghost stories are true. He is neither scary nor does he try to kill you. Quite the contrary. He's even afraid of scaring you and eager to help you the realm of ghosts you've been spirited away to, because this might slowly kill any living soul. Even though he's such a nice guy, I didn't grow to like him and wasn't charmed by him or his voice actor at all. And you might also know him from Kaguya and Taisho Alice. The love progression was too quick for my taste. Too much focus on other ghosts, a too cruel backstory, and too few emotional scenes between the two. I'm lonely. Come to me. You hear the whisper of the boy in the mirror. Once upon a time, there used to be a boy, a pupil of this school, but he was bullied so severely by his classmates. One day, the bullies chased him down the stairs until he fell down, cracked his bones, and collapsed in front of the mirror. The bullies decided not to help him, ran away, and let him die miserably. When he was found the next day, he had written the words, "I'm lonely," on the mirror with his own blood. And a few days later, the bullies disappeared, one by one, and ever since, everyone who touches the mirror will be sucked into his world and never return. The boy in the mirror, the shy Hibiki, is indeed lonely, and his backstory is indeed tragic and likely to make you cry. And you indeed should be careful not to be dragged into his mirror world, because he might not let go of you. On top of the cruel and emotional story, I really have to praise his voice actor, who also voiced Leo in Pure Fiore, for example, for the splendid job he did with this character, convincingly voicing his shyness, loneliness, sweetness, and madness. I just wish his mad side would have been a bit more prevalent, as most of the time he tries to be a good boy, and he really is. An immensely sad, but good boy you just want to protect now and forever. I would recommend playing the school world first, as I think it gives a good introduction to the setting of the game and definitely is the most spooky world. The school world focuses on various ghost stories and the mysteries of the school, meanwhile explaining a lot of the lore of the game. Though the focus on ghosts, besides the ones I'm allowed to date, made it also dragging for me. I felt there was a lot of talk, much world building, too much time spent with other ghosts, and not much action at all. But while the plot was dragging for me, I was surprised how quickly both ghosts fell in love with our sweet heroine Misa. Kureha loved her quicker than you can say Kada-san, and also Hibiki couldn't hold back for longer than 5 seconds, so the pacing really felt off to me in this world. At the same time dragging, while the romance was progressing too quickly, with both LIs deeply in love before the common route even ended. It emphasized how much the ghosts are yearning for her, and yet that didn't really make me feel anything, because I wished that those yearning scenes would have been presented more passionately. And especially with Kureha, I wished for more scenes where you can see them two get closer on a personal level and not just rescuing other ghosts. So very correctly, this world ranked 3 out of 3 for scariness. Really, don't play Kureha's route at night. It's scary and brutal. And ranks 1 out of 3 for sugar content, which also could be 0 for me because I just didn't vibe with the romance scenes, as the dialogue felt unnatural to me and the emotional scenes kind of forced. Who is he? Him who looks at the stars at night, every night. He who sits there so peacefully, stares with blank dead eyes and a tear running down his cheek. That's the urban legend of the deceased idol Sena, who you find staring at the sky at the same place every night. He's a true idol, bothered by his fans, seems a bit flirtish and slightly superficial, but the strangest thing is that he has never once mentioned something about ghosts. His route made me cry the most, though I neither like his voice actor, who famously voiced Shin in Amnesia, nor the idol trope. But for me, his route captured the sorrow of a love between worlds the most. It was so tragic to see them apart and fight for their love. Those are the kind of emotional scenes I also wish to see in Kureha's or Hibiki's route. Medi-san will call you. I'm at the school. I'm at your house. I'm right behind you. Another urban legend that is quite different in reality. Koyo might even be one of the least scary apparitions in this game, even if his average appearance and voice acting don't seem to promise much. He seems quite ordinary. I'm immensely happy to hear his voice actor again, who did such a splendid job as Yona in Tengoku Struggle. And Koyo is just the most gentle, kind, caring and selfless guy I have ever seen in an Otome game. If I ever happen to have a Japanese child, I'll call him Koyo, because I want him to be exactly like this character. And not only did his character surprise me, it made me fall immediately in love with him. With his humor, his relaxed attitude, and his immensely caring side. On top of that came a plot filled with action and tension. Not as cruel and uselessly brutal like in the school world, but with actual stakes, actual deep emotions. And Harin I can only admire for her proactiveness and sense for what is truly important. The route caught me off guard, and that alone made it worth for me to play the game. The urban legend world is indeed a quite urban setting, roaming the city as a ghost, as you suddenly died and have to get used to the life as a ghost. The urban legend world is ranked with 1 out of 3 for scariness and 2 out of 3 for sugar content, which is both accurate. The romance levels were relatively high and even slightly steamy, but despite not being centered around ghost stories, in Koyo's route lurked some real-life threats that will give you the creeps. And overall, I felt that this setting was more connected to Misa's personal story, especially with her relationship with her best friend, who is just the best friend in the world. All worldly sinners will neither perish nor wander the world as restless spirits. They fall to hell, where they are to atone for their sins, with severe punishments for their souls. And the one who administers those punishments is the god of hell. He's set to come for your soul, torment it, and before you can't take it anymore, will devour your soul so you'll never find peace. While I'm not quite sure about the last part, Seiya is indeed the prison guard of hell, or also called the head of the HO, the Hell Organization, watching over everyone who dies and administering the hellish punishments. Yet he has a gentle and elegant air, splendidly emphasized by his voice actor you might also know from Henry in Pure Fjorde. And Seiya would do anything to bring the MC back to Earth after she has fallen into hell. He seems mature and reliable, but I don't know, suffers from a rare condition, which apparently is a thing in Japan, though I've never heard of it before. Don't worry, it's nothing too serious, but certainly a character trait that made his route kinda weird and yet entertaining. And I wasn't always sure whether he was in earnest or joking. But turns out, love is no joke for Seiya. And though it's not exactly a steamy game, his elegant weirdness earns him my most sexy award. He'll come for you in your dreams, the devil, the incubus, making you fall asleep, wrapping you into his sweet smell, and then he'll come for you. Come for your soul. One apparition very true to the legend. Minami is a wicked devil, trying to deceive and lure the MC into yielding her soul to him and haunting her in her dreams. But even when he finally gets the chance to snatch her away, he hesitates. The biggest surprise of this character was for me that my favorite voice actor, who also voiced Huang in Pure Fiore, doesn't only use his sweet voice, but also his super scary but sexy young voice. What a blessing. And indeed, you can say that the character is kind of torn between those voices. For me, he had the most tense build-up with the most satisfying climax. His route had a great mixture of scary and tense moments, as well as entertaining banters between the characters, be it the MC or be it Seiya, his arch enemy. One of the most interesting characters I got to know in this game. So in the Hell world, you will suddenly fall into hell under very weird and unknown circumstances, and can choose between two characters who are both mad in their own way. So on top of the 2 out of 3 scary level, I'd say it's rather a 1 out of 3 for me, less scary than Koyo's route, you get the highest sugar content score with 3 out of 3, which is absolutely true. I even think it's unfair which kind of steamy scenes you get in those 2 routes compared to the other worlds. I advocate for same love levels for everyone. So yeah, high sugar and steam, and instead of fear I would say it's a 3 out of 3 madness level. So definitely one of the most intense worlds. Zashiki are known as little mischievous kids who bring prosperity to your house. Yukimado at least looks like a grown-up, but he's as energetic and carefree like a little child, speaking like an old man in a cheerful voice, very different to his role as Shelby in Cupid Parasite, for example. What a combination! And then nonchalantly decides he'll learn how to be a good Zashiki in the MC's house and bring her happiness, though he actually spends the most time eating or watching anime. What a man! Well, I didn't quite fall romantically in love with Yukimaro. He still made me laugh the most. The unique combination of his traditional appearance, old-fashioned way of speaking, but then his carefree and energetic character are just too hilariously funny. And he was a huge reason why the ayakashi word was such a big hit for me. I laughed a lot, shook my head in the absurdity of the situation, a real banger of a common route, with this hilarious and extremely lovable character. If you ever need an answer, ask Kokuri-san. Draw the alphabet. Yes, no, and a Tori gate on a paper. Take a 10-yen coin, put your finger onto it, and invite Kokuri-san to answer your question. But whatever you do, don't let go of the coin, otherwise Kokuri-san will curse you mercilessly. And he does. Just not the way you think. This scary apparition is rough, in roughing up your hair, mean, yelling at you to come to dinner before it gets cold, angry at Yukimaro for eating the food he made for you. This man is a walking contradiction, and I enjoyed his struggles of not officially liking her, just not disliking her, you know, officially, until he finally gives in to his forbidden emotions, combined with his wonderful looks and rough voice actor, who really brought the character's emotions across so well, and who also voiced my precious Eon in Radiant Tale. So I had a really lovely time dating this strong, angry ghost. Not only the dynamics with the MC, but especially with Yukimaro were such a bliss to witness. Those two are like black and white. Hence, every conversation with those two is guaranteed to be hilariously and funny and never fail to make me laugh. The Ayakashi common route is the only one where you stay in the real world, and thus is the most lighthearted and funny route, also centering around Misa's family. So ranked with a 0 fear level, correct, and a 2 out of 3 sugar content. Yes, 2 is fine, though I think for me 1.5 or 1 would be accurate, as it felt less than in the Urban Legend common route. I'd recommend to play the Ayakashi common route last, due to some spoilers for other routes, and it immediately spoils the big secret of the game, which of course you can quite easily figure out yourself by paying attention in the other routes, but I prefer to at least not know for sure and puzzle everything together by myself. I bought the game solely for the art. I just love her. And though I absolutely adore the art in this game, I still think it seems a bit different to her other works, like I didn't find the typical Yuya nose, for example. But still, I love the color palette and it works so well together with the supernatural setting. What I liked even better than the CGs this time were the music and sound effects, because the sound and even visual effects can be extremely spooky. For an Otome game, that is. And the music fits the overall tone perfectly, with super spooky tracks as well as tense tracks. And what I love the most is that every character has his own character theme. And they really are so well composed. So much that I'm listening to the soundtrack even outside the game. I want this to be the soundtrack of my life. So far, 9-RIP is only in Japanese, but considering it even outperformed Radiant Tale in the first week's sales, thus being the second best-selling Otome game on the Switch, and considering all top 4 best-selling games will be localized, Tengoku Struggle, Radiant Tale, Hamafuda, and Sympathy Kiss, I'm convinced that chances are really high and 9-RIP will get localized as well. And I really want everyone to experience this game. But in case you don't want to wait until what could probably be 2025 or want to learn Japanese with ghosts, I can highly encourage you to do so. Despite the supernatural setting, the game is actually not too difficult. It has some words connected to mythology, yes, but most of the dialogue is around upper beginner to lower intermediate level, I'd say. And only Seiya uses some different grammar and vocabulary, because he's a weirdo. So definitely get the game in Japanese now to learn Japanese with ghosts, or hopefully they'll announce a localization in the future. The game was advertised as a horror Otome game, and the school world definitely lives up to this. Though it was definitely bearable even for someone who doesn't even watch horror movies. It is slightly scary, especially in Kureha's route, but to an extent I think most people can live with and horror fans will be disappointed of. Still, you do get your fair share of spooks and brutality in some routes. But overall I don't think the game is too brutal and dark. It's mainly really the school world that harbors a cruel truth. But due to the 4 different settings, it's really difficult to describe the tone of the game, as all the settings feel quite different, and also the character routes feel so different. So I'm sure no matter whether you love horror, madness, emotions or rom-coms, you will find a route that will suit your taste. Of course, all characters are inspired by Japanese ghost stories and urban legends. And also does the world building include Buddhist beliefs, as well as modern urban internet legends, like the elevator to another world or the Kisaragi station. What came as a surprise to me though, considering that most of the characters are based on scary ghosts and apparitions, they can be mad and slightly possessive, but none of them is truly evil or harmful. Honestly, I first had a rough start with the school world, due to the pacing that didn't fit my taste, the useless cruelty, and I even thought this game's beautiful art is wasted to something like a cheap Tengoku Struggle ripoff. I thought the common route was uninspired, the map events breaking the immersion, and was annoyed by the wall of text coming at you in the last chapter of each character to explain their past trauma. But as soon as I got into my second common route, my opinion made a complete 180. Then I started thinking how amazing the pacing is, how impactful the storytelling, how emotional the dialogue, how multi-layered the characters, how sassy and proactive the MC, how beautiful the overall motive of the game, about healing lonely souls, posing questions about love and relationships, how to move on, how to lead your own life instead of it being dictated by others, how to make a love work that is not supposed to be, and how perfectly incorporated this is in the ending structure, letting you decide which kind of life you want to lead with the LI. Then I thought, everything is perfect about this game. If it wasn't for the school world, and maybe even if the routes were a bit spicier, describe the kiss scene a bit more, or let out a little moan, it would easily be a 10 out of 10 for me. Maybe it still is. Ask me again in a year. But still, the game is deeply romantic, with characters I haven't seen like this so far. Deeply moving, deeply emotional, with such beautiful love stories, with the most beautiful motives about the tragic, bittersweet, and yet eternal love between worlds. I certainly feel that the ghosts of 9-RIP will linger inside of me for some time to come, until maybe hopefully I'll be able to move on once the FD is announced. Until then I have to settle on replaying my favorite routes, being Haru, Minami and Koyo, and recommend you to check out Tengoku Struggle, which I thought has a similar topic, curing their life's trauma so they can move on in life, and that also deals with Buddhist mythology, like hell and nirvana. So definitely check out Tengoku Struggle if you want to get a similar feeling to 9-RIP while waiting for the FD or the localization to happen.